Scene management. Now, at the moment, our game, we have a counter which, as you can see at the top, the timer is counting down to zero. And traditionally, when you get to zero, that's you lose a life, game over, and so on. But that's not clearly happening. And we've also got lives, which are set to three. And in the last video, we did a bit of code which respawns the chicken back up to this point. But when it gets to live zero, you can still carry on playing it. So there's no like game over scene or anything like that. So this video is basically about putting something together. So when we get to live zero and we get to time zero, it'll take us to a game over scene. Now at the moment, we have this sample scene which we've got set up, and that's the default name it gave us. Maybe I should change the sample scene name so it's level one, something like that. I'll come back to that some stage. And at the end, and everything's included within this scene. So what we'll need to do is build up another scene for game over and maybe another scene at some point for like a start to the game. So rather than just diving straight into the chicken level as we just saw on screen, maybe we'd have like options at the beginning to choose the difficulty settings and to check the high score or to check the controls so you learn how to play the game before you start playing it. But anyway, at this point, we're actually just going to look at setting up a game over scene. So within the scenes folder, you can have a clicker on the left hand side or double click it here. You can click on the plus sign and you can go up to scene and it will generate a new scene for you, which you can name yourself. So game over is going to be mine. And if I just press enter on it or double click on it, it loads up the scene for us. And this is what the scene looked like on the sample scene before we actually did any work at all on it. Now, the reason why I've said to come into scenes to do it is because it generates the main camera view. And I found when I actually did a scene when I was actually within another part, and so when I was in the sample scene looking at the assets, it didn't generate the main camera and I wasn't quite sure how to fix it. So probably a good idea for you just to come into scenes and make your scene like I just did. So on this scene, we're going to have a game over bit of text, and at some point we'll have buttons on there for you allowed to quit the game or for you to restart the level, that type of thing. But all I'm going to do is to add some UI and text, and it generates this canvas for us. If I just double click on the canvas so we can see it all, on our text, which is tiny down in the bottom left hand corner, I'm going to call it game and press enter over. I'm going to change it so it is central aligned. It is overflowed, and all this was done in the timer and text, I think it was called, video showing you how to do all this stuff, which I'm kind of showing you again now. And I'm going to set it to white so we can see it. And one of the nice things is on the sample scene, I actually brought in a font style, which has also been made available in the game over scene. So it must be available within your project then. So I don't need to re-import anything. So it was Super Mario 256. And then the last thing I need to do is just make it nice and big and put it into the position I want it to be. So for the time being, that's all I really want it to look like at this point. I might want to change the background color so it is black. I don't know why I want to do black. It seems right at this point, like so. And I just need to press save on this then. Now, in terms of being on the sample scene and our chicken dying and the lives getting set down to zero, we had a bit of code within our sample scene. I did double click on it again so it loads up. Why isn't it load? Oh, it's because I need to go to assets, sorry. So we had this fall in death bit of code, which basically did all that stuff of respawning the chicken back to this point, decrementing the lives. So we're just going to add a couple of lines of code to this bit of code in order for us to actually go to the game over scene. Now, at the top, we for the text to be used, in previous videos, I said you need to have this kind of library at the top identified. And there is also a library of a library which needs to be referenced in terms of managing scenes. So that's what that top line is there. So I'm just going to copy and paste it across to there. So it's using Unity Engine.scene management. And the whole point of that is any kind of code you do now from this point, which is referring to scene management, they won't actually work unless this is kind of linked at the top here. And the only line of code we really need to add at this point then is this line of code, which is kind of self-explanatory when you look at it, which will then take us to the game over scene when something happens. So at this point, when the chicken loses a life, it will take us to game over. There isn't anything on here code-wise at this stage which counts down from 3 to 1, and then when it gets to 0, it takes us there. I've just put this in to show you how it works. So I'm going to save that bit of code. I'm going to come back onto the Unity, so let it do its little compiling thing. I'm going to pause a second. It got up to 17 seconds that time. Now, really, what should happen is when I press play, it should work. But I can tell you straight away, but it's not going to work because we haven't done something, and I'm hoping it'll give me an error message now, not to make myself look too stupid. And if I lose my lives, so no error message at this stage, but then you can see down in the bottom left, it's saying the scene game over isn't actually linked at all. So the scene we made, so if I come off the game over scene, and I'm actually going to need to go into the game over scene. This has not been connected to our kind of play thing. I think, well, how do you do it then? So if you go to File and Build Settings, you'll notice that our sample scene is in there, and it's got the number 0 on it. Now it's recognizing the game over scene, but it hasn't actually been included at all, so I've just got to tick it. Now, if it didn't appear here, you just literally click on Add Open Scenes, and you'll see, because we're on the game over area, it will get added to here. Now, the 0 and the 1, which is on the right-hand side, is basically kind of giving it a priority in terms of what's get loaded first. So whatever 0, so a sample scene will get loaded first. And there's a bit of code which can make it go on to the next scene, which is scene 1, next scene, which is scene 2, and so on. But we've actually done a line of code which specifically takes it to the game over scene. So if I am going to add like an intro scene of some sort, allowing people to choose the difficulty of the game, then we'd have to make sure that's 0, it's the lowest number possible to make that load up first. Now, I don't need to build and run or anything at this stage because this is about exporting a completed game, but I just need to close it down. And when I actually press play, what should happen, I'm hoping it'll play the sample scene first, or it should. He says, oh, so because I was on game over, it made that one come up first then. So let's go on to sample scene. And I think the 0 and the 1 I was referring to is actually when you export the game. So I've got to make sure I'm on my sample scene to make this work properly then. And when I press play, now what should happen, when I lose a life, I should get taken to the game over scene. That's the plan anyway. So let's see. Yeah, it worked. So the only issue is, at this point, I only lose 1 life to come here. And secondly, there's nothing on the game over scene to allow me to carry on playing or to quit the game and stuff like that. But that'll probably be another video. So just a couple of little things to tidy up on the falling death bit of code to allow us to kind of get down to 0 lives for this to happen. I'm just going to bring in a bit of code which will sort this out for us, and I'll explain it as well. I'm just going to bring all of that in. I'm hoping it doesn't give me any issues when I do. So if I paste it over this bit here. Right, so this bit of code, as long as I've kind of I've copied over the correct stuff, so if I just control S, it basically says if the player comes in contact with the death barrier, then then it'll also check if lives are equal to 1. And I don't know why, but it kind of doesn't like it when I put a 0 in there. And if it does kind of equal to 1 once I've actually hit the barrier again, so technically when I'm on my last life, it will take me to the game over scene. Now, if it isn't equal to 1, so it starts off at 3, that's something we set up previously in the code, then it does that process of respawning me, taking a life away, and making sure that the lives get updated on the scene. And the idea is this loops around then in this if statement until I get 1 life left and I fall off, and then it takes me to the game over scene. So just to check that works, then if I go back onto here, I'm going to pause just to see how long this takes. Oh, actually, that did it really quickly. Oh, I didn't paste it across properly. So if but there, and I think I might need. Let's have a look. Else, I think I need another one on the end. I've got a feeling that's probably the case. I love the way it says no issues found on here, but then it does tell me when I come up to this. So looking okay at this stage, I think. Optimistically speaking. Uh, right, so no error messages. So therefore, when I press play and the game loads up, so I will die 3 times. Well, 1 time, 2 time, and on my 3rd time of dying, when the lives get taken down to 0, it takes me to the game over scene. Huzzah! Now, the only other bit I really need to kind of look at changing as well is the sample. I keep double clicking on sample scene. I'm on sample scene. But where the countdown timer, so I'm going to open that bit up as well. And this is the timer basically. I need a little bit of code in here, which is going to be if timer is equal or time start is equal to 0, then take me to the game over scene. So I'll also need to add scene management in here. But that's something I can do in my time, and you can work out how to do in yours as well. But in the next video, wouldn't it be cool if we had a button on a game over scene which restarted the game, and also a button which allowed us to quit because we got fed up with dying all the time?